The CFP exam is very unique in the sense that you can become eligible to sit for that exam through like 4 or 5 different paths. And because of this, everybody's CFP exam study journey looks a little bit different. In this video, we're going to talk about the main things that every CFP exam candidate needs to do well while they're studying in order to maximize their probability of passing the test. And then we'll talk about a few items that pertain to those specific paths that you may or may not have come through in order to become eligible to sit for your CFP exam. Don't mind my Amish beard, it's the last day of November. It won't be around for too much longer. Now, these 3 or 4 concepts, while they are overarching themes, they're also very specific and practical. These are things that, in my opinion, if you do well, you are going to drastically increase your chances of passing this test, such that honestly, if you really focus on them, I don't see how you could fail the test unless you have like no finance background up to that point. So take this as a direct study guide on how you need to approach your prep for the CFP exam. Now, whether you haven't met any education requirements and you need to do a whole lot of work leading up to your test, or you're already approved to sit for the CFP exam, you should be extremely intentional around how exactly you allocate and spend your time studying. My recommendation is to do it in 3-hour blocks and to actually do 3 hours every single day of the week, 7 days a week, from the time you start studying until literally the day before you're going to sit for your CFP exam. I've talked about this study strategy as it pertains to some other exams, and from time to time I'll see comments like, AJ, you can't study every single day, you'll burn out, it will be inefficient, you won't be able to retain much. And in some circumstances that's true, but based on a lot of people that I've talked to, and certainly the way that I've studied for every relatively significant finance exam I've had to do personally, studying for 3 hours every single day is just a lot quicker at racking up the total volume of time spent that you need to probably hit in order to be prepared enough for your exam. And maybe even more importantly is that studying every single day requires you to be honest and true to yourself in the fact that you're not taking, well, I'm studying a handful of days a week and taking a couple days off, but really a couple might mean 3 or 4. And then instead of studying for 3 months, it becomes 6 and then 9. That scenario is just way, way too common for people studying for the CFP exam. Don't fall into that trap. Just tell yourself that you're gonna study every single day, sit down at a desk. For me, it was always like 7 to 10 p.m. Make sure that you're actually putting in the time that needs to be given to being able to pass a difficult test. Notice I did not mention an actual amount of hours that you need to spend or amount of days that you need to spend. That's going to differ pretty drastically depending on what your background looks like. So we'll talk about that in a little bit later in the video. Next is around how you approach each one of those study days. Now, you hopefully have some sort of study guide. If you've gone through university classes to meet the education requirement, you probably have templates of the final exam or the final exams that you took. If you did a Kaplan online educational requirement program, you should have a lot of practice questions available there. If you've done the capstone thing, you should have a physical book or an ebook with plenty of practice questions throughout the text, and then also a login to the CFP board's website where you can get 1 mock exam and hundreds of practice questions. So there's no excuse for not being able to do tons and tons and tons of practice questions during your daily study routine. Hear me out here. Reading the content as you study each day is how you introduce things to your brain. Doing practice questions, getting some of them right and some of them wrong, and then importantly, learning from the ones you get wrong, that is how you teach yourself the concepts. Just introducing the themes half the time is not actually learning them. It's just not how the human brain works. You have to critically use, apply things that you've read or learned, find the gaps in your understanding to learn where you're getting questions wrong, see why you got one wrong, what your thought process was that went the wrong way, figure out what the right way you should have worked through a problem was, and then ultimately understand that conclusion, redo the problem, and then get to the correct answer on your own. That iterative process of learning is way, way, way more important to actually getting this stuff to stick in your head than just reading through the material. So you have to read it and learn it and be introduced to it, but then practicing through practice questions is really where you're going to do most of your learning. With that being said, I would recommend every chapter or every lesson or block, whatever the structure is in the content that you're studying with, make sure to do any practice questions that they're giving to you as you progress through that. But also if you're just using like a text around the different sections of the CFP exam, you need to intentionally pause certainly after at least each of the 7 sections, but probably along a lot of checkpoints along the way. Pause and go to the CFP board website and then take any practice questions relevant to the section or the entire book that you just studied. It's not only going to quiz you on the things you just read and hopefully learned, it's going to, like I just described, point out any weaknesses in your understanding on the concepts, and it's going to serve as a checkpoint to say, hey, how well am I doing after reading through this piece or this entire book of the CFP curriculum? That's super helpful in trying to gauge your progress, which will ultimately help you determine when you're going to register to take your CFP exam. You can also treat, switching gears just a little bit, you can also treat mock exams that you have available. There should be at least one through the CFP board online, but maybe potentially several through your test prep provider if you're buying a package. You should treat those mock exams, in my opinion, as additional practice questions. I just don't really find it all that valuable to sit down and solve out an entire exam, an entire real CFP exam worth of questions in one sitting. To go back through and later see which ones you got wrong, it's not super efficient since there's such a big volume of questions. You're gonna get a large quantity of those wrong, even if you're only getting 20% wrong. And then you're gonna have to try to remember a lot of different questions that you just worked through. I think it's inefficient. Plus, the CFP exam is not a test that people typically run into time constraints on. So it's not like you really need to practice your tempo or your pace throughout the questions in order to get everything done in the allotted time. That being said, using the mocks as blocks of questions, it actually can be even more beneficial doing them this way, because now the questions are going to be about random topics rather than 20 questions about the same topic and then 20 questions about the next topic type of thing. So it forces your brain to be a little more flexible. And this is something you're doing later on during your study program, which might be 3 weeks in, 3 months in, or hopefully not, but potentially 3 years in to your CFP studying. But because you've covered so much content and practiced so much up to this point, taking questions from random sections amongst their curriculum in a block through using mock exams this way will, again, it'll just cause your brain to have to be quicker on its feet, I guess, or cause you to be a little more nimble in your thinking, and honestly just test you better and show you where, again, any weaknesses may lie. One of the nice things about the CFP exam is you don't have to memorize formulas. They give you all the formulas on a formula sheet on the computer when you sit down to take it. So as long as you can hammer out the concepts that get you to solve from practice question to correct answer and do a handful of them right in each type of topic for the exam, you're going to be very, very well prepared. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. It may take 100 hours, 200 hours, 300 hours or more of studying and doing practice questions to do, which, if you're doing the math, is going to be anywhere from a month to 3 or 4 months of studying 3 days every single day in a row. But it's a big deal. Having the CFP credential will probably change your career, and doing difficult things is worth putting in the amount of work that they take. Doing important things is never an easy endeavor. Otherwise, that thing probably wouldn't be important. So just take my word for it. Use these approaches to become extremely well prepared for your exam, maybe even potentially over prepared if you spend a lot of time doing this. For me, it was about 3 weeks, but I had already been in the industry for 5 years and had done the CFA exam, which had a little bit of overlap. So there are other things that helped me out in the accelerated course. Do the things you need to do to get really well prepared for this big test. Now, I mentioned maybe you had satisfied all the educational requirements through your undergrad university classes. Then I would also recommend using the curriculum, the tests, quizzes, or exams from those classes as study material, because for the CFP board to have approved your college's undergrad program towards meeting the education requirements, the info has to be relevant. So it should be good test prep. For me, I did the accelerated course, so I had a really cool condensed 300-page study book from Kaplan. I just read through that whole thing and worked through all the practice questions in that book over the course of 3 weeks. That was the bulk of my preparation, besides doing a couple hundred practice questions on the CFP website and the one mock exam on the CFP website. So I would totally recommend using Kaplan's material if you're on the accelerated course. If you're someone who's been in the industry for 20 years and are now getting the CFP exam, that's a little trickier to say exactly where, the best spot to pull content would be from. But you had to have met the education requirement somehow. And if you did the accelerated course and the capstone alternate and the requirements they have, the CFP board website still will have login credentials for you. So you may only need to use that material as reading material, which would be maybe the most minimalist approach towards preparing well for a CFP exam, it could be enough to get you to where you're up enough on the terminology to actually pass your test. Finally, when you go into the exam center on the day you're gonna sit for your exam, make sure to wear a suit and tie. They check for this stuff. I mean, one of the staples of the College of Financial Planning and becoming a professional amongst other professionals is professionalism. And so if you're not dressed like a professional in a black suit, black tie, usually they want to see you in a 3-piece suit with a black vest underneath, very well polished shoes. Sometimes a cane and a top hat can help your chances of passing. If you don't do these things, you're almost certainly gonna fail. But if you do all of these things, especially bring the cane and the top hat, you're gonna have a much higher probability of passing. The proctors love to see someone dressed in total formal attire. So just make sure to wear all that stuff when you go to sit for your exam. There's really not much else more valuable than that I could tell you. So as always, thanks for watching.